In an old cemetery in the southwestern Ohio city of Troy is the final resting place of someone who showed true heroism at the Civil War Battle of Gettysburg. That person wasn't a soldier, and in fact wasn't even a he. Stay tuned. Miami County, Ohio was founded in 1807, and the men from the county enlisted in several different regiments during the Civil War. Some of the traces of that war can still be found here. We'll begin with the city of Troy, the county seat. The town was laid out in 1807 by the grandfather of Lew Wallace, famed Hoosier Civil War general and author of Ben-Hur. Troy is an eclectic mixture of buildings and has spent much effort on both constructing the new and renovating the old. In Troy's Riverside Cemetery lies the remains of Josephine Miller. At the time of the Battle of Gettysburg, she was living with her grandparents, the Rogers, at their log farmhouse near the town. Though the farmhouse was near the fighting and would eventually be struck multiple times by artillery fire, Josephine began baking bread for soldiers of the 1st Massachusetts who were stationed nearby. Additionally, she also helped nurse the wounded who'd been brought to their cellar. 3 months after the battle, Josephine and local farmer William Slider were married and soon left for Miami County, Ohio, along with other members of William's family. In 1886, a monument dedicated to the 1st Massachusetts was placed near the old Rogers farmhouse. Veterans of that regiment arranged for Josephine to attend the dedication. Photos were taken, including one with Josephine standing by the old stove she had used to bake bread during the battle. The soldiers presented her with a golden badge for her courage and service. Josephine's final years were plagued by severe rheumatism, which made walking impossible. She died in 1911, one of the many heroic who are all but forgotten today. Also buried in the same cemetery are a number of Civil War veterans, including a few African American veterans of the U.S. Colored Infantry, the 55th Massachusetts, and its sister regiment, the 54th Massachusetts, made famous by the film Glory. All of these men, regardless of race, took part in the often deadly struggle that would determine America's future. Also in Troy are at least 2 examples of churches that took an active role in the Underground Railroad. The First Presbyterian Church has a tunnel in its lower level that was reportedly used by runaway slaves. Ankle shacklets and other artifacts have been found here. Across the street was the Trinity Episcopalian Church, which also has a tunnel that may have at one time been connected to that of the Presbyterian Church. It's believed that this was the church where in the 1840s slave hunters came to find a runaway slave woman who had been staying there. The woman escaped out the window just before the men arrived, and the slave hunters returned empty-handed. Built right on the eve of the Civil War, the Allen's Mill Bridge, now called the Eldine Covered Bridge, crosses the Great Miami River at a point just north of Troy. The bridge was completed in 1860 and, at 224 feet, is the longest surviving example of its long truss bridge design. using all wooden X-shaped cross braces, though the bridge was later modified to use metal reinforcements. The bridge underwent a major restoration in 2005 and was the subject of the History Channel's Back to the Blueprint program. Located next to Troy's downtown public square, the third floor of this 1855 building served during the Civil War as both an armory and a recruiting office. The building is now undergoing a major restoration. Next, we journey to the town of Piqua, also established in 1807 after having been the site of several clashes between the British, French, local settlers, and Shawnee tribesmen beginning in the 1750s. Today, Piqua is a city that much values its heritage. Located along a curve in the Great Miami River, the town was hit hard by the Great Flood of 1913, but recovered and moved on. Located near the river is a small park dedicated to Stephen Rowan, an Irish immigrant who came to the U.S. at age 10 and settled in Piqua. He became a midshipman in the United States Navy in 1826 and went on to serve in both the Mexican-American and the Civil Wars. As captain of the USS Pawnee at the outbreak of the Civil War, his ship was on its way to the relief of Fort Sumter when Rowan learned that the fort had already surrendered. The Pawnee was then sent to Norfolk, Virginia, where she was able to save the USS Cumberland from being destroyed by Confederate forces. Ironically, the Cumberland would be sunk the following March by the Confederate ironclad CSS Virginia, the day before the Virginia's epic battle with the USS Monitor. From Norfolk, the Pawnee was then assigned to duty on the Potomac River near Washington, D.C., when it reportedly fired the first naval shots of the war, firing on Confederate batteries across the river. Rowan had a 63-year career with the U.S. Navy, one of the longest on record. He eventually reached the rank of Vice Admiral. Near Piqua is the Forest Hill Cemetery. In the Veterans section is this magnificent obelisk, surrounded by the graves of veterans of multiple wars. This nearby cannon reportedly came from the Civil War battleship Hartford. Near the cemetery lies the historic Johnston Farm, now a public historic site. John Johnston immigrated to the U.S. from Ireland at the age of 11 and eventually became federal Indian agent for this region. He played a crucial role in keeping the peace with the local Shawnee, Wyandot, and Seneca peoples, especially during the War of 1812. Johnston died in 1861, just weeks before the start of the Civil War. His farm would go on to become a mustering and training grounds for at least 2 Ohio regiments, the 94th and 110th. On what is now a bike path and walking trail was once a set of railroad tracks. Just after midnight on Sunday, April 30th, 1865, a train engine pulling a few special cars came lumbering down these tracks toward a brief stop in nearby Piqua. It was the funeral train of President Abraham Lincoln. Next, we journey on to what is now Tipp City, Ohio, but what was originally called Tippecanoe at its founding in 1840. Old Tippecanoe was the nickname for longtime Ohio resident William Henry Harrison, who was elected president that same year. Originally a stop on the Miami-Erie Canal, the town's older section still retains much of its historic character. It's here that we can find one of the more unusual Civil War monuments. On what was once the property of Civil War Captain Daniel Rouser of the 8th Ohio Cavalry, this statue rests. The statue commemorates the horse that Rouser rode while serving in the war. Rouser credited this horse with saving his life and considered the horse his friend and partner. Local lore says the horse was buried on these grounds. When the U.S. Postal Service later acquired this land, the deed stipulated this plot of ground be preserved in memory of the horse. Lastly, we end our journey through Miami County in the small town of Pleasant Hill, originally called Newton. At the center of town is a statue of a Civil War soldier. Carved in Italy, the statue was set atop a base of Vermont granite, which rests on a bed of locally quarried limestone. The official dedication occurred on October 31st, 1895. Several years ago, it was reported that the City Council had voted to have the statue removed as it was deemed to be a traffic hazard. But townspeople petitioned that the resolution be rescinded. Like the Civil War soldier that the statue represents, it wasn't going down without a fight. The statue remains in the heart of town, a perpetual reminder of the local men who answered their country's call to service. Thanks for watching.